Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 67 of the Watch Rolling Podcast. The Watch Rolling Podcast is a veteran owned podcast that focuses on horology from a veteran's point of view while sharing valuable veteran resources with the watch enthusiast community. My name is Jason. I'm your host. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. This pod is brought to you by the Anti-Watch Watch Club. The Anti-Watch Watch Club is a 501c3 charitable organization that utilizes a drop style culture to fund all kinds of veterans and first responder and Leo charities. And, through a whole variety of products. They have stuff like the flag behind me. They have Nalgene bottles, you know, t-shirts, shorts, hoodies, you name it, coins, awesome glow in the dark coins. So check them out at antiwatchtalk.org. They're doing a bunch of great stuff. They just started a new program called the Blue Guardian program, which helps pay for some training gaps that a department might have for an individual officer. So say like it's a small department, they can't pay for, self-defense training or, some kind of like tactical training. This program will help pay for it for the Leo to get the training so they don't have that knowledge gap. And it's a pretty good program. So check them out, antiwatchclub.org. The pod is also brought to you by Mushi Watch Straps, which is funny because today's guest is Rob, the owner for Mushi Watch Straps. Mushi Watch Straps is a veteran-owned company that provides all kinds of cool extra value straps, watch rolls, you name it, spring bar tools, the whole nine. It's a great company. Rob's a great guy. I personally love the canvas watch roll, which you see right here. We'll talk about in a little while. But let's get to the point of the podcast, which is to bring on Rob. I asked Rob to be a guest because Rob has a full-time civilian career. He's an Air Force veteran as well, and he also manages this side business, which is Mushi Watch Straps. And I think that a lot of veterans get out and actually want to have a side business. So I think it'd be good to hear from someone that's actually served, got out, does the main thing, and then does the side thing as well, and does it pretty well. So without further ado, here's Rob from Mushi Watch Straps. Hey, Rob, welcome to the pod.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jason. Appreciate it.
Nice. Good seeing you again.
Good seeing you. Yes, always enjoy the podcast and the videos now, and so I'm super pumped to be here.
Well, I'm super pumped to have you, and I like your shirt too. I forgot to tell you about that earlier.
Oh yeah.
It's nice.
Little pastel pink.
Yeah. So you're the guest of honor. Let's do the wrist check because I got to remind myself to do it, man, because I don't know what it is. I forget wrist checks all the time. But What do you got on the wrist today?
So today I have, given that we are veterans talking about certain things, I figured I would get a somewhat inspired watch. I have the Benris Type 1 on a Mushi brand new gray canvas, wax canvas strap.
Oh, nice.
Kind of that monochrome look, if you will.
Yeah.
But this watch, this is a rebuy for me. I bought this. So this came out in 2020. I think it was late 2020. And I bought it relatively early on and sold it because it was kind of, in a way, it's kind of boring. It's a dive watch. It's not too much different than, besides the case, it's not too much different than a lot of other divers. But after I sold it, there was just this like nagging feeling in the back of my, this thought in the back of my mind of like, you have to rebuy that. So yeah, this is a rebuy for me. And honestly, it's been ever since I rebought it, what kind of one of my go-tos. Just it's so easy to wear. It's clean, no date, no fuss.
Yeah.
And
number one,
and it's a strap monster.
Oh yeah, number one, the heart knows what it wants.
Yes,
deny it.
No, you cannot deny the heart. I don't care. I honestly, I could come up with 10 reasons why I shouldn't have this watch, but here it is.
Yeah, and it looks great on that wax canvas because I'm a big fan of monochrome. You know what I mean? It looks right at home on there.
Oh, it's super, super clean. I mean, the original, the OG had the fixed bars. So, a 2-piece wouldn't have been an option. But this modern version that they came out with is just awesome. It's so, so good.
I need something with I need something with fixed lugs. I know what I want, but I want them to release a new version.
So, oh, really? And what is that? Well,
FXD.
I was gonna say FXD.
Yeah, I'm not gonna jock the French Navy. I'm not super into Red Bull racing.
Yep.
Or Red Bull. Like 25-year-old me was probably into Red Bull. But 25-year-old me no longer exists. So I'm just waiting for something. Like, man, if they came out with the same color scheme, I know it wouldn't be the same material. They couldn't use the 925 sterling silver. But if they came out with a color scheme like that in the FXD, bro, sign me up, man.
Yeah, that
Sign me
nice,
up.
that taupish gray. Oh, that would be so awesome.
Chef's kiss. But
Yes,
anyways,
exactly.
on my wrist today,
Ooh,
I
look at
have
that.
my Say Coated Mill Sub mod. No, man, I'm getting a new camera soon.
Well, I'm convinced it's almost impossible to get a solid wrist shot on these streams. Like
Yeah.
it's horrible.
I have it on a gray fluted Mushi nylon strap. Look at that thing.
It looks so good on that.
Yeah, so shout out to my boy Joe over at Say Coated. For those of you that follow Joe on Instagram, Joe's done 2 builds for me now, and actually he's done more than that. A couple of them I've gifted. My buddy, shout out to my buddy Vince, who's my barber. Uh, Vince has had a G Shock that he's had since like he was an E5 like years and years ago, and I had this little thing. I was gonna leave it off my wrist. Trying to put it back on when you're talking on microphones and speaking impossible, especially when you had hand surgery like I did. It's like I'm sitting here fumbling around with it like a dork. But Joe does a great job with his builds, man. And so I had this mill sub mod, and I asked him. I said, because that was the vision, right? I'm like, man, this thing it was originally too nice, like it was too finished. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
I
yeah.
said, hey,
It
man,
didn't look right.
can you age this? And he's like, I can give it a try. So I shipped this thing out to jolly old England, and I told Joe, I'm like, look, I tell the barber, like Vince, what I want. I don't tell him how to do it. And so he's like, I got it, bro. So he like coffee ground the dial, did the whole
The
fading of the
insert,
bezel.
yeah, I was gonna say the insert looks amazing.
Oh my god, bro. He did the concentric brushing on that, like, you know what I mean? And I didn't see a video of it, but I just picture him like, I guess a cup of tea because they're in England, just sitting there, slowly,
Yes,
going circles around,
yeah.
and then
While he's got "God Save the King" on in the
yeah,
background.
yeah. And he has a buddy who does engraving, so they actually engraved one of the lines from Anchors Away for me on the case back. So the case
Really, I
back
didn't
is
know that.
yeah. I have a picture of my stream on my feed. I'll take a picture tomorrow when I do my because I already took some pretty cool loom shots for tomorrow. So those of you that are watching this, we are recording this September 7th, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So you'll have it when you see this next Tuesday, you will have seen the loom shots. But it's really cool loom, man. It's just awesome. But the case back's engraved, and this was just kind of like my gift to myself for hitting my 30-year mark for officially being retired um, from the Navy. So it's just man, chef's kiss
It's so
on
good.
there. Then this strap, man, this gray fluted is just it's just and I'm never gonna put anything else on it. Like it's just perfect.
There's something to be said. I mean, there's a whole podcast about the gray NATO, but the gray NATO is like in my guesses probably one of the most popular across all forms of collecting because it works on just about
Oh
any
yeah,
watch.
the perfect frame for
Yes,
the artwork that
yeah,
is your watch.
exactly, because it's not plain like a black one. Get you a
Mhm.
little bit of color, but it's not too outlandish, so it can go with a variety of colors. It's just perfect.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then I snooped around with Joe and said, "Hey, there's a specific dial color I've always been interested in, and I would love one of these in a dial color." And he's like, he goes, "I'll find out how to do it." I'm like, "Thanks, bro." Because I guess he's got like, man, once I started posting pictures of this thing, he's like, I've been inundated with orders. People just come, and I told him, I said, "You make a good product, man. It's beautiful, you know." Like, and even then, some people don't want like the super duper patinaing and all that stuff to it. I don't want to give away his recipe on how he did it, but he did a pretty good job. And
That's awesome.
but anyways, we're not here to talk about my watch and how awesome it is. We're here to talk about you and your journey and what it's like to have a full time gig as well as balancing a side business, which is Mushi Watch Straps. So, Rob, would you just mind highlighting some of your professional experience for us so we get a little background on you?
Sure, sure. So my military experience, I did 8 years in the Air Force as a crew chief on the KC-135. It's the aerial refueler tanker. I loved every single minute of it. I actually didn't have any thoughts about getting out of separating. I enjoyed it. I got to see the world, got college paid for, the works. Like, it was really working for me. And with that, I had the opportunity, as it was getting close to separation or re-enlistment time, I had the opportunity to apply for air traffic control, and that process took a substantial amount of time, almost 2 years.
Wow.
And throughout that process, I did more research and kind of really vetted on what I was going to do with myself, because I never set out to be an air traffic controller. I actually wanted to chase a commission and become a maintenance officer and all this other stuff.
Oh, nice.
And so I get right about to the edge there of needing to reenlist or figure out what I'm doing, and I get a class date for the FAA Academy there in Oklahoma City, and I talk it over with the wife. It's just her and I at the moment, and we make the jump. And I had talked to my flight chief, I'd talked to my chief, I'd talked to my commander.
Mhm.
Everybody that I talked to told me the same thing of like, man, this is a great opportunity. You really need to flesh this out with air traffic. And I was kind of concerned because the training process can take upwards of 3 years.
Yeah.
And I didn't want a deployment or something crazy to come up and really put a kink in the road. So I made the choice to separate and to finish up my enlistment, and I would eventually go back.
Mhm.
Well, life got in the way, started to get in the way with kids and house and all these other things. And it just wasn't necessarily as big of a priority as it was when I was, mid 20s.
Yeah.
So, but I have been an air traffic controller now for just under 15 years.
Oh, wow.
I am the air traffic controller that is on the radar scopes, that's down in the radar room, not up in the tower with the binoculars and all that stuff. So once the plane leaves the airport and can no longer be worked by the tower, they switch communications over to me. And again, I will work the planes in between their destinations, or even down to the ground with the smaller airports that don't have a tower.
Oh, wow.
So I've been doing that, like I said, for just under 15 years. I love it. I like I told you earlier, I didn't set out to do this.
Yeah.
I just kind of fell into it, like a lot of people do. They just
Mhm.
fall into whatever. And I consider myself super, super lucky. Um, let's see. And then with that, I about let's see here. I've always had this inkling with my career, because
Mhm.
I don't have to take my work home. There's
Yeah.
nothing I can take with me. So I always had some free time, and I always had this in the back of my mind of like, I want to do more. I want to force myself to do more and to better myself. To I've got interests in everything:
Yeah.
watches, fly fishing, family, you name it. Like, everything under the sun, I feel like I've got an interest in, or I
Mhm.
could get interested in. Sometimes I have to stop myself of like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't need to go down the fountain pen route. One, because my handwriting sucks, and
Yeah.
two, because it's just another rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So it's things like that. And so a few years ago, it was almost 5 years ago, I made the decision to get my real estate license.
Oh, nice.
And so I became a realtor, and I still am to this day. And I have had success with that.
Nice.
And it's been awesome. It's been something that flexes different muscles than, air traffic would, and challenges me, pushes me. And I was doing that in conjunction with air traffic. And in 2021, it became apparent that this other opportunity was going to or that it presented itself to me. I was buying straps. I bought some Mushi straps
Mhm.
as a customer, and there was a guy, the previous owner. Shout out to Chris. Chris had started Mushi, and he had just had a new baby. He had a very high demanding job and some other things, and he just didn't have the time to, put forth that time that the business required. And so he was shutting down shop.
Mm.
So I actually reached out to him and said, "Hey, I love these straps. Like, I really am impressed, and I have been fairly active in the watch, collecting game for well over a decade,
Yeah.
and so I know what a good strap is almost just by looking across the room at one. And
Mhm.
then, so I had said, "Hey, I would really like to buy some watch or some new straps from you, and have some extra lying around that I can give out as gifts, or just keep for myself." And we started having this conversation back and forth, and he was based internationally, so there was a little bit of a time difference, and so this kind of drug out over 2 weeks. And as we were having this discussion, he let it be known that he had interest in selling the whole thing, not just like 10 NATOs. And
Yeah.
so I told him, I said, "Well, I have my degree in business. I love watches. I want to be more involved. I have this desire to do more. Let's have this conversation. Let's flesh this out a little bit more." Before I know it, I'm talking to my wife saying, "Hey, this is a thing. I think I can make this make this happen." And I made the jump.
Yeah.
I bought the company and got everything, the customer list, the suppliers, the products,
Yeah.
everything. I bought the whole thing. And then it became a hassle, or not the hassle, I should say this, the opportunity. I had the
Yeah.
opportunity to then figure out how to transition this thing from an internationally based company to a US based company,
Yeah.
and basically, I don't want to say start from scratch, but kind of start from scratch, because Chris had shut down he had shut down Instagram, and he had shut down the website. I mean, it was still there, stagnant.
Mhm.
But I had to come through and change everything, units
Yeah.
of measure, and all of this stuff. But throughout the whole process, Chris was awesome, and kind of helped me along, because I would ping him and say, "Hey, what about this password or that password?" And so he kind of helped ease that transition over to my ownership.
Yeah.
And now I've had Mushi myself for the better part of 2 years.
Oh, nice.
So I've had,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you, thanks. So I've had all three things going. I've had air traffic control, I've had real estate, and then I've had Mushi, all running in line.
Man, so I think that's an interesting thing. First of all, congratulations, because you know, I think a lot of us military people will quickly give a summation of everything we've done. And to us, right, to ourselves, it's just like, "Oh, okay, yeah." You know what I mean? Like to ourselves, like what we did. It's like, no, man, like you you took a big risk, you got out, right? Which is a
Yeah.
big risk. Not
uh,
everybody does that.
no, at the time, I had some people tell me, a couple people tell me that I was kind of crazy, thinking like, "Dude, what are you doing? You like it here? What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Even my wife said, are you sure? Are you
Yeah.
sure you want to get out? Because she knew that I liked it.
Yeah. And the Air Force has wonderful bases. Like they're just beautiful. Like it's like in the Lion
I,
King when you're sitting on the Air Force base and you look over
bro,
across the Army base, you're like, "Don't go over there."
bro, I can tell you of a TDY that I took, and we landed at a Navy base, and we all were like, "Oh no, we got to stay on base."
It's man, you better know what you sign up for when you come on Navy base. It's we we ain't playing around, bro. Like
No, no.
that's that's another story for another time. But my point is like, you've done quite a bit, and I think that's good to hear because I think a lot of times that we don't realize like how much of our days are taken up when we're active, right? Like when we joke about the sit around and wait or the hurry up and wait and getting in, we used to my first ship was a carrier, we used to stand in line so the Marines would get in line and then we'd walk away like an hour later and they would be like, "What the hell?" Because there was no line for anything, right? And et cetera, et cetera. But then when you get out, you're sitting there, you're like, man, like I know when I retired, I had huge amounts of time where I had to do something, right? And so I think it's just good to have fellow veterans on because it's like, yeah, you are capable of filling that time and you are capable of filling that time with some pretty unique stuff. And you have the unique opportunity of filling some of that time with something that you actually want to do,
Yes.
right? It doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. It doesn't mean it's not going to suck or be a hassle at times, like you said, because sometimes it is. Sometimes you're like, damn, man, I just want I just want to sit down, have a cup of coffee, and like watch YouTube for 15 minutes. But you're like, I got to do some inventory, or I got to do this, or I got to do that, right?
Right.
Um, answer customer emails. So I think that's an excellent intro because it's like, yeah, I got the air traffic control thing, and I want to make sure that I state that I'm really happy it takes like 2 to 3 years for you guys to get qualified, and not like 2 to 3 months.
Oh
I,
yeah, no,
yeah,
it's legit. So I mean, it's not a school per se, but I mean, it's the equivalent of getting like a master's degree or something
yeah,
like that. Like it is a lot of work, and all along the process, there are multiple stops where you can one false step and you're done. You're washed out. And I mean, some people think it's overly harsh at times, but unfortunately, it is that for a
yeah.
reason. You know, like it's I should say, unfortunately, it is that reason, or it is that way for a reason. Like there's not wiggle room, you
No,
know, so it has to be tight.
yeah, I totally agree because as a guy who floated on top of the water, I think it should be really strict when you're under the water, and I think it should be really strict when you're up in the air.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have no problem with it whatsoever. So so now you've had this site, you've had Mushi Straps for like 2 years. Um, I got my start by basically being a Mushi customer, right? Ordered some straps and stuff like that, and then when I found out you were a veteran-owned business, I reached out to you, and we've become buddies over that time. Yet to meet, but it's gonna happen. It's gonna
I
happen
know
one day.
we've come close a couple times.
Man, sucks, dude. But yeah, you're right. We've come close. But and then you've been a wonderful sponsor of the podcast. And I make sure everyone knows like my two sponsors, Anti-Watch Club and Mushi Straps, provide me no monetary benefit. It's just a way of helping out the AWWC's charity and to help out Mushi get the word out there because A, I want to help a veteran owned business, and B, the products are freaking good and they're super affordable, man. Like I showed my favorite thing was the canvas watch roll. Things like $29, and you can put like 4 or 5 watches in it. It's got suede on the inside. It's made of really good canvas. It's got a cool little Mushi tag. It's got a leather strap, like things. It's got a rivet, like the little rivet pad eye, and it's just awesome. And you can roll them up and like I put all kinds of stuff in them. I will put watches in there. I'll put tech stuff in one, and they serve all my needs and they roll up like little burritos and I stuff them away and they're now if they were real burritos that'd be even better. But they're little burritos.
Yeah,
They do a
no,
good job.
it's an amazing thing when you get a couple rolls like that and you realize like, how did I live life without these things?
Yeah,
I remember traveling and having watches shoved in socks, like a roll of socks inside my shoe and stuff like that. And now that
yeah.
I have the rolls, it's a completely different game.
And then you get scared you're gonna forget your watch in your sock in your shoe,
Yep,
and then you're like, "Where'd my watch go?" It's like, "Oh, it's in my shoe."
yep.
But anyways, so we've discussed, you've already covered like, what your side business is and why did you start it. Um, so what's one thing that doing this for the last 2 years has taught you that you didn't expect to learn? Has there been like a surprise thing that popped up? Um,
Um,
or is there a common myth about having a side business that people used to like shove down your throat that you found out isn't necessarily true?
all right. So common myth is that it's not that hard. It can be extremely hard, extremely frustrating. The hardest thing for me is visibility.
Okay.
I assumed, and it's on me for assuming this, I assumed that because I sold great stuff at reasonable prices, that somehow, some way, the universe would just be like, oh, here you go, Robert. Here's all these customers buying your stuff. Oh, and here's all these customers coming back and buying more stuff because they like the stuff that they bought already. Like, again, I was naive. And I just thought that it would be easier to get my stuff out there.
Yeah.
But that's been kind of a big thing for me is having the patience and understanding that sustainable, real growth, not something that I just buy because I mean, I can go out and buy $1,000, ad campaigns and stuff like that without doing that, but just honest, easy, like not easy, but sustainable growth is hard. It
Yeah.
just takes time.
Yeah. And I've noticed that there's a small little grassroots movement going on between I know like me and some of the other guys, like Justin over at Recon Team, Forsberg, Alex from Army and Time. We've all been discussing. And I think I even know a buddy of mine, CJ out in Australia, who's like I need to
I
get some
know.
Mushi.
I know.
You know,
I gotta get the international stuff squared away. That's been one of my latest frustrations
yeah,
is figuring all that and making sure I don't want any major hiccups with tariffs and
yeah,
like custom fees and being on the hook for crazy bills type stuff. But that's what I'm working towards is making sure that I can open it up for international because I'm serious. Like I have amazing straps that I don't buy crap. I only get what I
yeah,
would wear, and I don't think that everybody should have to pay $150 for a NATO. Like
yeah,
you can get great stuff at reasonable prices, and given that this is a passion project for me and not my primary source of income, I want it to succeed, but I want it to also do good for people. Like
yeah.
if I can get people squared away with some great stuff and help them in their passion, at a
Mhm.
reasonable price, then I've succeeded.
Yeah, and I think that's also another important thing to remember is like, it's kind of like me with this channel, right? Like you're doing 99.9% of the stuff for your strap company, right? So,
Yes.
you're the one that's going to have to figure out how to do this stuff internationally. So one day, whoever the international tax police are, don't show up at your house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like also, how do you work? Because I know that people in Australia get like, hammered, bro. Like when they order stuff from out of the country, they get hammered on prices and stuff like that and taxes and how do you most effectively ship so they're
Yeah.
not sitting there waiting for 4 months.
Right.
um and then like you talking about the quality of your product, right? I think it's awesome that it's affordable because especially when you're newer, like you don't know, like I know for me personally, I'm not super into like wax canvas stuff. I like more nylon stuff. But when I look at it, I can order like a metric butt ton of nylon straps. And if I get a color I don't really dig, but it's in 20 millimeter, well, it goes in the box, and then maybe someone I know needs a 20 millimeter. I'm
Yep.
like, I got you, man. You know what I mean?
Y-
Like, and I just mail it to them, or my wife needs one, and I hook her up, and here, babe, here's a blue one, here's a red one.
You need one for mowing the lawn and all this other stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
you know what I mean. So when I do my 80s video montage like Rambo before I go do the yard work, I'm like,
yes.
dun, anyways, but and it's when it's a one man show, it stuff takes time. So I think it's
Yep.
important to like remind customers, like, hey, this is one person, man, and we're effective. But like, if the kid's crying and I got to do this instead, the family's still going to take
Yeah.
priority. So it's not
Right.
some
It
gigantic
is,
corporation.
as I can only say to the listeners, like it's about that balance. It's about patience and perseverance, knowing that you keep at it long enough, eventually you're going to get there. Um, and it just takes time. I have to make sure that I do it right. I don't want to do something half-assed or whatever. So I want to make sure I research and I vet everything out so that I don't put myself or my customers in a bad spot.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great point of view because even if a strap is like say $20, I mean that's someone worked for that $20.
Exactly.
Someone
And I wouldn't want them to walk away with their experience from Mushi going like, "Man, that guy sucks," or "That whole process sucks." Like, that's the exact opposite of what I want. I want people to be like, "Dude, I can buy straps anywhere because I'm selling the same stuff as a lot of companies. I won't say the names, but I'm telling you with 100% certainty that I'm selling the same stuff at less than some of these other companies are that are more interested in the money side of things and not the passion project. And you can buy your straps from those companies, or you can come to Mushi and gain that sense of community, that little small sliver of watch fam, as as some
Yeah,
people will say. And that's what I'm trying to foster. I'm trying to create that. I'm not trying to take over the world and become a billionaire off of selling NATOs.
yeah. No, you're right. And so you talked about like your biggest challenge. It sounds like your biggest challenge of having the side hustle is the exposure, like you said, of getting
Yeah.
Mushi's name out there and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
you mentioned having a business degree. So I know we've discussed it before, where you talked about how uh, a lot of times people will tell you like the business degree really sets you up, but and in some ways it doesn't. Is what I remember you saying. But let's talk about that business degree real quick because I think it's something that maybe most of us in the military would be kind of good at, and we just don't realize it because we kind of, no matter what your job is, you got to do a lot of interaction between shareholders and
Yep.
stakeholders. So maybe expound on that a little bit for us, like how that business degree has helped you, and then um, whether you would recommend it to someone who maybe is not so sure about what they want to. They know they want to do a business thing, but they don't necessarily know if the business degree is really going to set them up.
Sure, sure. So first and foremost, my degree has collected dust in a way since I graduated. Obviously, air traffic control, you don't need a business management degree, but I did need it to get in the door. So I always consider myself lucky. I joke that I haven't used it, but I guess technically I used it day one to get inside the door and
Yeah,
qualify. So there's that. Um, it's helped me by gaining a lot of the terminology that is used in business,
okay,
understanding various aspects of accounting, understanding, um, you know, all sorts of different. I mean, I could go on and on without, getting too
yeah.
too far in the weeds.
I remember
But
you saying tax codes and
yes, exactly. I mean, the idea that taxes and deductions and all of these things are a thing, you have to be cognizant of that. You have to be, if you're trying to apply for small business loans, you have to understand what the bank might be looking at. As far as your debt to income ratio, your profit, your losses, all of these things. How much liability does the business have? Again, getting yourself familiar with those terms. I'm not saying that you have to be a whiz. I'm not saying that you have to go in and start breaking down, all these different things, but you will have
yeah,
experience creating bar charts and pie charts and spreadsheets and animations and all these other things that will be of use when you're having to give proposals to get financing.
yeah,
There's a lot of side hustles that need some seed money, and that's one thing that I would recommend for vets that are getting out and looking to do something that interests them is go to your veterans and military affairs office and ask about some small business loans and grants and things like that, because there are all sorts of programs out there that you may or may not qualify, but you got to lift up all those rocks and see what's underneath them. And you might find a program that you're like, hey, wait a second, I think I might get some money for that. Well,
yeah,
now you have to leverage some of that business school experience if you've got it, and writing your proposal, and again working on charts and your aesthetics of it, and knowing exactly what the data says. You can have
yeah,
all the data in the world, but if you can't speak to it, if I show you a chart and I say, "Hey, look at this circle," and this little portion of the circle is bigger than this portion of the circle, like it's not that effective. But if you get up there and you start talking about, using terminology and percentages and sounding like you have a clue, those people that are going to be evaluating your proposal will give you a lot more serious consideration.
yeah,
So I would say that, and then second, or to kind of further up what you were asking about, do I think it's of use? Yeah, I think business school for people that, as they're getting ready to separate or have separated recently and want to figure out what to do, I can't recommend business school enough, because there are so many disciplines within it.
yeah,
So we've got accounting, marketing, management, administration, you've got finance, all these different things, and you can find the niche that appeals to you the most.
yeah,
Throughout my time at the University of Utah, I went through almost every school inside, or every discipline inside of the business school. I
oh, nice,
ultimately ended on management, but I dabbled in finance, I dabbled in accounting, I did some administration. I didn't do too much in marketing because I'm just not that creative. I
yeah,
wish I was, but you can really start to hone your skills while simultaneously sprinkling in, like if you're really, really creative and you really want to develop, logos or whatever
Yeah.
else, and different products and whatnot. So you go into marketing. Well, while you're doing that, you can go through and gain some finance classes. So you understand how the spreadsheet works and how the banks are going to be viewing things as far as finances go,
Yeah.
or investing and all these other aspects of it. You can go into accounting and again and see what happens there to make sure that you don't get yourself into a cash flow problem where you're not, it's not just as easy as balancing your checkbook. There's so many other
Yeah.
factors at play. So you can do all of that while still focusing on your specific lane.
Yeah. No, I think that's excellent. Because I've had, before I retired and everything, junior sailors who, especially like in my field, because we're called engineers in the Navy, but we're not like real engineers. We're like shipboard engineers. But a lot of hands-on work, welders, electricians, machinists, and all this stuff. And a lot of them would say, "Well, I want to get out and go into business on my own." But then in the second sentence, they'd be like, "But I don't want to go to college." And I would tell them, like, "Look, man, like I'm not saying you got to get a business degree. I would highly recommend you get some kind of certificate.
Yeah,
You learn enough to know um, when someone's taking advantage of you. You learn enough to know to where you don't dig yourself a hole you can't get out of financially, right? Like you." And I always tell people, like, I guess you don't want to waste time turning your twos into fours, but you need to know how to take those twos and make them not screw you over in the long run,
right.
right?
Right. Well,
So what? Yeah,
and there's a lot of programs like you said where you might be able to get maybe not a 4-year degree. You can get some entrepreneurial programs, and they will show you some of those little tips and tricks that I just talked about. Because you can be the best welder in the world and want to go start your own shop, but
yeah,
how are you going to keep track of the books? And so, okay, you don't want to do the books, you want to hire somebody. Perfect. That's awesome. There's a lot of people that don't want to dabble in their own accounting. But don't you think it would be in your best interest, considering this is your livelihood, your passion? Don't you think it would
yeah,
be in your best interest to have a working knowledge of what your accountant is doing and where the money is going, to make sure that they're not sloughing off a little bit on the top
yeah,
to go, to their Bermuda fund?
yeah.
Like
There's a
you,
whole what is it? CNBC show about that. What's that called? Greed or something?
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like
yeah,
there's so many examples of people who are genuinely good people doing a good thing, and other people take advantage of
yeah,
them, and they just don't know it. And
yeah,
again, I'm not saying you have to be an accountant. I'm not saying you have to have a forensic accountant degree or whatever, but a basic working
yeah,
knowledge. And there's so many ways that you can get that, whether online, community college, universities, what have you.
yeah. No, it's awesome too because I feel like understanding all that sets you up too, like for longevity in the business. Say you get to the age where you don't want to actually be involved in the day to day anymore,
Yep.
but you've brought someone up and then you want them to run the company and you still make some profit off it, right? And then you still want to be able to like look at the stuff and be like, okay, everything's getting ran the right way, and I'm not going to get shafted in the long run, right? Because it is your
When
legacy at that
what
point. It's
yeah,
like,
when you have these side hustles and your name is attached to it, and you are, you have that stewardship over it, why wouldn't you look at every possible angle to protect it? You obviously think it's important because you wanted to do it, but I just don't see why you wouldn't want to make sure that you look after all the possible angles.
yeah, no, it makes sense. And so for you, do you would you say that the passion is more running a business, but you happen to find one that you could take over that kind of aligned with something you were naturally interested in? But if you were to put them on a scale, would you say that the running the business has more weight than the strap part of it? You love straps, but I mean, if we're gonna splice hairs here, and then if so, do you think that people have to be honest with themselves about what it is that they actually love the most? So if it's a business, throw yourself into the business and concentrate. And we're talking minutia here.
Yeah,
Concentrate less on the fact that it's decorating cakes,
right.
right?
Right. Um, no, I would say the passion is the driving force,
Okay.
because because again, this is not my primary source of income. It'd be different if it was, if I was not air traffic, it was just Mushi. then I would be much more involved in running the business, actual business running. But for me, the passion is what gives me the motivation
Okay.
to do the work.
Okay. No, that's yeah. I don't like
Because
you.
if I wasn't passionate about it, I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I don't need it. I don't want to do something that I'm not passionate about. There's just too many things in life to find enjoyment in, to do something that you don't want to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. You value your time. So if you're gonna do something with your time, it should be something that you really enjoy doing. Makes
Exactly.
makes total sense.
There's a little video I saw with Rick Rubin saying exactly that, of like, he basically says, like, do what you are passionate about, and I'll have to find it. I'll send it to you, but it's really powerful, and it struck a chord with me, because why why force yourself to do something that you're not into?
Yeah. That's why I do this, man. I mean, I know it's taken a like it's metamorphed over time, and the podcast and everything, but the ultimate goal has always been to help my fellow veterans or anyone that's active duty or anything, really anybody that
Right.
wants to tune in. And it's kind of morphed into this. I've just realized that we're the best resource we could ever have, right? Like someone hearing this coming from you, someone who's been knee deep in the game, quote unquote, for a couple years with the side hustle, but has also like set goals, went and accomplished a career that they actually enjoy doing, and then is now juggling both of them. I mean, what what kind of better person would you want to hear from, right?
Well,
Like who's going to tell you the straight scoop on it?
right. When you think about this, like in any discipline, sports, music, you name it, name me one person that is at the top of their game
Mhm.
with success that doesn't have an overriding passion for it.
Yeah,
It's not there. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not passionate, it's not going to work. It's not going
yeah,
to be sustainable.
yeah.
You might have a little flash in the pan, and then you're done. That
Mhm.
passion is the driving and the sustaining force.
Yeah. No, makes sense. I totally agree. So, let me see. I wanted to ask you the influential mentor, but we already know that you didn't really have one. But
No.
what's an this is my favorite one of my favorite questions. What's an underrated tool that you think is indispensable for running a side business?
Okay, so I mean, there's a lot. I'm trying to think of something. I'll try and think of something unique, but I'm afraid I'll probably draw a blank on that. As far as a tool to run a business.
Like a literal tool. Because here's the thing, I've asked this question a couple times now, and sometimes it's the most obvious thing, and then that people don't think about it. People like would listen to you be like, "Oh man, I don't use that." You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, man, I don't know. I want to give you something really good, and I should have I should have like I should know this, but a tool that helps me run my business
Or
is.
juggle between your business and
All
your
right,
actual.
I tried to think of something unique, but I have to go back to the calendar.
Yeah.
So Google Calendar for me helps in so many ways, because, again, wife, kids, and my kids are insanely involved. You I've got We've got them all over town every single night of the week, type thing. I'm jealous of their life, let's just say that. So so all of that stuff, then air traffic, then real estate, then Mushi, then this, then that, everything on top of it. And there is no way that you can be effective without some form of hardcore organizing of your day-to-day events.
Yeah.
And I mean sometimes I will. Okay, so for example, this call, right?
Mhm,
So you and I knew that this call was happening,
mhm.
right? It was no secret. But what did I do? I resent you the link. That
You
was
beat me
your
to the
that,
punch. Yeah,
that
I
was
was gonna
your
send it.
yeah, so it was your link that we had to redo,
Yeah,
because we had some technical
yeah.
difficulties, and so I again, we had texts, we had a whole previous call, like there was no
Yeah.
secret that this call wasn't happening tonight. But what did I do? I had to send you that because in my mind, I have to put everything on
Yeah.
that calendar. Otherwise, I'm going to miss stuff. And I still miss stuff. Lord knows I still miss stuff. But a good form of organizing of your day-to-day events and forecasting out a week, 2 weeks. I have stuff 6 months out, kids, doctor's appointments, you name it. And I will throw that out there. As soon as it becomes something, it goes in the calendar. I
No.
don't care. I don't care if it's 2 years down the road.
No,
It goes in the
I
calendar.
think that's wonderful, man, because and I think some people might not like me saying this, but I think it's also important to remember, like, when you get out, right? Like, so, I retired as a, E7 as a chief. I had some control of my schedule, right? Not all of it, but some. But if you get out like an E4, E5 or below, you probably don't have a lot of control over your schedule in the military. You're probably doing a lot of what you're being told to do to some extent. Um, so grasping a tool like that, if you're going to run a business, now that you have complete control over your schedule, you should really exercise that within the nth degree for yourself, right? I'm not saying
Yes.
you gotta do every minute of every day. I'm just saying, like, you know, really take a look at your schedule and be like, look, I got 4 hours between when I get off of work and then I gotta like do homework or something.
Right.
I
Well,
know I do that. I do
yeah,
that. Like, there's mornings where I do stuff. I wake up at 4:30 every day, right? So there's time where I'm doing stuff on my phone that's for the podcast or for an article or I'm answering emails, et cetera, et cetera. And I squeeze in that time, right? So I think that calendar reference is an absolutely essential and vital one that some people don't think they need, but if they were really honest,
you will get yourself in trouble quicker than you can even imagine without a good proper calendar situation going on. It's so easy to start dropping the ball with following up with customers, with your personal life, missing different things because you're so involved in your side hustle or your main hustle. You'll start to forget birthdays and different things like that. It's just bound to happen.
yeah,
So I actually would say start with as kind of strict as you can possibly get as far as really, really detailed and
mhm,
build in that calendar and then slowly start to peel back and figure out that balance of like how much is too much to put in the calendar versus okay, I need to add a little bit more or whatever. But it'll take some time to hone the system down for you. But I'm telling you right now, it only takes a couple missteps, and before you know it, you're behind the curve.
yeah. No, I agree. Um, I use mine pretty effectively, but it's been difficult, like incorporating it with like a family calendar kind of thing. Um, but that's another whole podcast for another whole time. And that could be an
Yeah.
episode by itself.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so if you could give your pre side hustle, pre side hustle Rob,
Right.
one piece of advice, what would it be?
Be patient.
Okay.
Be patient. Nothing in life that's worthwhile comes for free, and it comes easy.
Yeah.
And you have to be patient again to have that thing get that solid foundation. It
Mhm.
takes time, and you have to just slowly keep at it and methodically think about the angles that you're being approached with and not missing steps and again be not being patient. You're going to miss things or you won't be present in the moment because
Yeah.
you're in such a rush to get to the next step and to go on to this other thing. But if you're patient and you take things as they come and as they
Yeah.
should be, then you can also be present in the moment.
Bro, that's beautiful. I tell people that all the time. Like, it sounds so funny, man. Like, anytime someone does something good, I'm like, or it's coming up, right? Like, a good thing's coming up. I will tell people, like, look, you got to stop. Like, when it's over, you got to stop for a minute. Like, if you got to walk away from everyone, if you got to go in a room and shut the door, you need to sit there for a minute and bask in that moment, like fully take it in, you
Well,
know?
because what else are you doing it for then?
Yeah.
If you accomplish this big deal and you just move on to the next one, what did you
Yeah.
do it for?
Yeah. One of my favorite movie scenes is in Major League when Willie Mays Hayes finds out he makes the team. He opens his locker and he doesn't have the tag,
Oh,
and and,
yes.
and he walks outside in the parking lot, and
And
he
he's
does like
doing his little
his
dance.
dance. Yeah, he does his little dance, and then he collects himself and he goes back inside, right?
Yes.
Because I tell people all the time, like, enjoy that moment. I said, don't live in it. Enjoy it for what it is, and get up off your butt and go keep doing. Because a lot of times people also will live in that moment and then they don't do anymore. They stop
Yeah,
because
because they don't have that drive to think like, "Oh, what else is next? How
yeah,
how can I take this good thing and make more of it or make it even better?
yeah,
How can I
yeah,
how can I take that next step?"
yeah. It's
Or maybe it's not a next step, but it's a continued step along that same path of success.
yeah. No, you're right. I totally agree. It's that could be a whole nother podcast. Like setting goals, different ways you can set goals, different types of goals you can set. I mean, that would probably be an hour by itself. But so another one of my favorite questions to ask guests. It's slightly different based on who I'm interviewing, but so for you, when it comes to customers, right? What's your biggest pet peeve when it comes to customers?
My biggest pet peeve for my customers is when they have unrealistic expectations.
Okay.
I'm a realist, and sometimes that's to a fault. Like I will tell people things, and I'm pretty direct. I don't know if it's the air traffic side of things, but you kind of just have to say the way it is, good or
Yeah.
bad, because some people's life might be at stake.
Mhm.
And so obviously people's lives aren't at stake with watch straps, but I still like to be direct and I like to be honest. And for people to have unrealistic expectations when they spend $15 on a strap and
Yeah.
they expect it to basically something that it's not supposed to, or to be the same as a $200 strap.
Mhm.
That's where I take issue with, because again, you're buying something, you need to understand what you're buying and use it for its intended tasks.
Yeah. Yeah. My
So
favorite people like, "Oh, I don't like this hamburger." You're like, "But you ate like 75% of it." "Yeah, I don't like it. I like
right.
my money back." You're like,
Right,
"What do you
or like if you message me and you say, "Hey, this strap broke," and I go, "Holy crap, that sucks! Like, tell me about it. What happened?" I'm not saying I'm not believing you.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely curious because I have had some of my straps more than I had longer than I've had Mushi, more than 2 years.
Yeah.
They've never failed, never. And I some of these ones, like I purposely, if I get a new strap, like this is a brand new color,
Mhm.
I purposely bend it and tweak it and try to mess with it, so that way I have a working knowledge of like kind of what it would look like after some hardcore use.
Yeah.
And so like if you tell me, "Hey, this broke or this is messed up," and I ask you, "Hey, what happened?" It's because I'm curious, and I've had people that try and dodge the question,
Yeah.
or then assume that I'm trying to imply that they're doing something bad. It's like, no, I'm curious so that I can either one, tell my supplier and we can tweak things and figure out how to make the product better, or two, I can have other customers and I can tell them, "Hey, by the way, don't do this because I've seen some failures in the past." It doesn't
Yeah.
happen hardly at all, but that's more or less one of my biggest pet peeves.
I could imagine someone's like, well, I tried to tow my camper from Burning Man through the mud with
Yes.
my, fluted Mushi strap." You're like,
Yes.
pretty sure that's not, it's not gonna it's gonna fail. I'm pretty sure if
Yes,
you do that, it's gonna fail."
exactly. I mean, I've personally, and I've seen other people with with the nylon straps. I've seen them use them as like, you know, in luggage, holding luggage onto other luggage and different things like that, and it hasn't failed. So for a watch strap to fail, it takes some
Yeah.
serious abuse.
Yeah. No, nylon's pretty freaking tough material.
It is. It
Yeah, it's
is.
pretty tough,
I
but,
mean, I've put it through the dishwasher to clean it. I've put it through the washing machine to clean it. I've done a variety of things, and every time it comes out and it's like, it's still there.
oh, yeah, this weekend, I'm supposed to go get a little, one of the mini laundry bags, like they used to give us in boot camp, and
Yep,
it's gonna be my strap bag.
that
I got
perfect.
I got some when summer gets over, I gotta wash these. I have to wash these things at the
Yes.
end of the summer.
Get some of that
Um,
wrist butter off.
Man, I'm telling you, it's rough. Dude, Virginia, it's humid as heck. It's crazy. Um, so we're getting close to wrapping up the pod here. I always have a couple questions I like to ask, but my favorite question is so what's your grail piece or pieces?
Okay, yeah,
Sometimes people have.
so I learned a while ago there's no such thing as a true grail
Oh,
because once you get the grail, then there's another grail, and then you get that grail, and there's another grail. So, for years,
yeah.
for literal years, the Omega Speedmaster was a grail of mine.
Okay.
Like I wanted a speedy more than anything.
Yeah.
Well, what happened when I got it? I loved it. I did some backflips and everything. I was super pumped, but it didn't take hardly any time at all before I was like, "Oh, but wait, there's this other watch. Oh, and there's this other watch." It didn't.
Oh, there's
I
more.
Yeah, I have yet to see somebody attain that grail, and that grail, whatever that is, SKX to minute repeater from Patek or something. If you get that grail, I have yet to see somebody openly say, "I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm good." So that's the first thing: is there's no such thing as a true grail. You can have grail pieces like aspirational grails, but there's not one to rule all others. So for me, I would say, and I'll break this down even further. I'll say kind of non-traditional slash funky for me would be a Moser Vanta Black Swiss Alp watch.
I think it's cool.
Yes, super, super crazy. I love everything about that watch. I love Moser. I've gotten into my interest level into independent brands have been it's been growing for years, and I really, really like Moser how they have that playful side of things, with their fume dials and things
Yeah.
like that, but yet they still have the chops when they want to. It's a proper high horology watch. So for me, the Swiss Alp in Vanta Black with just the hands,
Mhm.
just the polished hands, and the black case and everything. That so like if you get a non-watch person and they're like, "Oh, is that an Apple Watch? Wait, why does that Apple Watch have watch hands on it?" And then you take off the case back or off the watch and you show them, and it starts a conversation, and it's just absolutely bonkers. So that would be like a insane lifelong aspirational
Yeah.
kind of non-traditional watch. And then on the flip side of that, a more usable, um, whatever traditional watch would be the Speedmaster with with the 321 movement in there.
Okay.
The modern Ed White.
The
There to
modern one.
me, yeah, the modern Ed White is as close to perfection as you can get in a chronograph.
Hmm.
I'm a big Speedy fan. I still have mine, and that modern 321 is just perfection.
We'll do some research. I know what it is, but
Yeah, when you seriously you look at that and you're just like, oh man, they really hit. I mean, there are people, watchmakers and people in the industry that will gush and gush about the 321 movement. Some consider it one of the top three greatest chronograph movements ever made,
oh wow.
and it's got so much history behind it, outside of the moon and all of that stuff. Yes, that's something crazy, but you take the space out of it, and that's asking a lot to say take out the space connection to the Speedmaster. But if you take the space connection out of it, it is a proper watch, and there's actual professionals that'll be like, it's amazing. That that
Yeah.
that movement is bulletproof, is gorgeous, is everything. Like you go down every possible adjective, and that movement has that. So my Speedmaster does not. I have the 1861, the prior, not even the new coaxial movement. And again, love that watch. It's absolutely bulletproof. So that would be my like semi insane, but yet still traditional grail piece.
Nice. Vanta Black, Moser,
Yep.
and
That's the crazy lane,
the
and then
modern.
the modern 321
Nice.
Speedy.
Nice choices, man. So Rob, do you got any parting shots? Like anything you want to, any knowledge you want to, you know, toss out to the world?
So, given that this is kind of veteran concentric information or whatever, or the podcast and watch watch not focused or whatever, I would just say this: like the people, and you touched on this earlier. The people are what, and I actually think you said this before, that the people are the real grill in
Yeah,
this hobby. So
relationships are.
yeah,
Yeah,
the relationships, right? So having this interest in a side hustle, having this interest in whatever the passion might be, is great, but use those relationships that you've built or that you will start to build, and really understand that that is how you're going to succeed, because you're going to have days where you're stuck, you're going to be lost or whatever, you're going to have some questions. And being able, like, if I already know, like, if I wanted to start a podcast tomorrow, you'd be the first person I could call,
oh
and
yeah,
I would be like, "Hey, dude, how do I do this? Like, I don't even know, like, or what kind of mic should I get?" Like,
yeah,
instantly, without even thinking, because I have that relationship there. So, and we do that so much in the military as it is, like that brotherhood,
yeah,
that kind of overarching connection where you can be separated. Like, for example, I separated in 2010. Okay,
mhm,
that's 13 years ago.
yeah,
I know for a fact that I can pick this phone up and I can text a handful of guys, and they would text me back immediately. And
yeah,
some of them I haven't seen in 13 years.
yeah,
We've stayed in contact via other means,
yeah,
but those relationships mean something.
yeah,
And so that's one of the greatest things that we have, is the ability to leverage people's specialties and knowledge. And, hey, so and so dabbled in woodworking. Well, I want to do some woodworking. Boom. Next thing you know,
yeah,
it may not be a direct connection, but through your direct connection, you're now connected with
yeah.
somebody that's in the know.
That's crazy. It is crazy who you're separated by like 1 or 2 degrees
Yes,
sometimes.
the world is run off of who you know, not what you know.
Yeah,
I am
exactly.
100% convinced on that.
And that is absolutely the truth.
Yes. I mean, seriously, if you think about it, so many people get put in successful situations because of somehow, some way they knew somebody that got them into that position.
Yeah,
Sure, they ultimately have to do the work, and there's
yeah,
something to be said about that. But they got their foot in the door because of this person that
yeah.
they knew.
And all you can do is put yourself in the very best position you can to capitalize on those situations when they present themselves. And
Exactly.
that's like, if you know what you need to do, go out and knock it out and do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The opportunity may not present itself for a month or a year, but when it does, be able to step forward with confidence.
Right. So yeah, I
And
would say just maximize those relationships. Like I touched on earlier, be patient and have find something that you have a passion for.
awesome. Awesome advice. So Rob, where can people find you online?
So a couple things right here. Mushi Straps. That's Instagram. It was Mushi Watch Straps. That's a whole nother story for another day. But we are at Mushi Straps, and the website is mushywatchstraps.com. Feel free. It's like we've discussed, it's a one-man show. Hit me up. If you message Mushi, you're messaging me. Ask me questions. I've been in the watch game a long time, and so if I've dabbled in micros, I've dabbled in the main brands, I've dabbled in everything under the sun. So if you have a question of like if I had an email yesterday, hey, what do you think? Would this work on an Omega Seamaster 300? Well, if I don't own it, I can again use that relationship situation, and I can reach out to people that I know have it and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, what do you think this strap would look like on your 300M or something?" So feel free, hit me up and say, "Hey, I'm thinking of this strap. What do you think it would look like on this, or would it work on this watch?" And so yeah, Mushi Straps is Instagram. MushiWatchStraps.com is the website.
Awesome. Well, I invite everybody to go check that out. Rob, I want to thank you for an hour of your life, hour and 4 minutes. It's been
Yes,
wonderful, man. We'll definitely, like I said, all my guests, and I probably might have a guest one day that I don't do this, but all my guests, open invitation back. We're eventually going to get to the point where we're having just watch talks on top. But I appreciate your time and I appreciate all the information you shared because I feel like there's no way it's not going to help somebody that tunes in and watch this. So thanks again for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks
And
for
thanks
having
for
me.
the relationship, brother. I appreciate it too.
Thank you.
Hey, and everyone, remember at watchrolling.com, you make the watch. The watch doesn't make you.